with Truth here, and it's time for more Otaku Evolution. Be sure to like, subscribe, and contribute to my Patreon. So as I was recently being waylaid in a foreign land, I had time, but not much, to reflect on one of my favorite anime films, 1997's End of Evangelion, the popular follow-up to the classic Neon Genesis Evangelion TV series. I told you it was a video all on its own, didn't I? I don't just want to talk about the movie End of Evangelion, though. I want to talk about the finale of the TV series. I want to talk about the finale of the Rebuild movies. I may even briefly mention the manga ending if I have the time. So, as you might gather, there are major spoilers involved here. And not just for Eva, but Ideon as well. Part 1. Congratulations. As I said in my TV series review, the final 2 episodes of Evangelion mostly quit the narrative structure of what came before for therapy from inside human instrumentality. We're not given a lot of details as to what instrumentality is, other than it's the joining of all humanity. It's through the intense self-reflection our main character Shinji experiences that he's able to come to grips with himself as a person and live a more healthy and optimistic life by learning his self-worth. He can be happy after all. It's nothing less than a thematic and emotional triumph of a conclusion.
It's okay for me to be here in this world.
But it's not much of a showstopper in the narrative sense, now is it? I don't know, maybe I'm just unsophisticated, but I think if your show has an ongoing plot, it should probably wrap up in a narrative fashion. Well, in March 1997, a movie called Neon Genesis Evangelion Death and Rebirth was released in Japanese theaters. The first part of it, Death, was basically a simple recap of the series and its character dynamics, but with some improved visuals. The second part of it, Rebirth, which continued the plot after episode 24 of the TV show, eventually made up part of a bigger movie. The movie Rebirth ended in a cliffhanger, which upset some of the audience. But Rebirth would be incorporated into what eventually became End of Evangelion. Part 2. Happy Birthday, Dear Children. We all know Evangelion creator Hideaki Anno pulled from several influences when he crafted the show. The works of Gundam creator Yoshiyuki Tomino were one such source. One specific anime Anno seemed to appreciate was 1980's space runaway Ideon. The show, which featured the fight between humans aboard the Solo ship and their giant robot, the titular Ideon, and the alien Buff Clan, who are determined to kill them, ran for 39 episodes. The ending of the Ideon TV series, while kind of a downer, wasn't nearly as brutal as the movie Be Invoked, which is like a new movie version ending to the series with better visuals. And those visuals concern the shocking brutality of war that helped the director gain the nickname Kill 'Em All Tomino. Remember, this was pre-Zeta Gundam. But the ending, which featured the destruction of a galaxy and maybe more, as well as the deaths of all the characters, also had kind of a playfully upbeat quality too. Like, despite all the tragedy, a better tomorrow was coming. It probably influenced the ending of the Evangelion TV series, as well as being an obvious influence on Anno's plans for End of Evangelion. Part 3. Third Impact. What Rebirth ended up being was a preview of the story of End of Evangelion, which was split up into 2 alternate episodes 25 and 26 for the TV series, Air and Sincerely Yours. Early concepts for it included a winter setting and an attack on the German branch of NERV. The movie, which makes use of 35mm film, was worked on by a number of different hands, including those at Production IG, which had previously assisted in some of the episodes of the show. IG worked on the 3D computer graphics sections, rendering special effects that would have been nearly impossible using traditional methods. Still reeling from being forced to kill Kaworu to save mankind from the last angel, Shinji is in no mood to fight off the UN peacekeeping force's deadly raid on NERV HQ, which resulted from SEELE's disagreement with his father as to how to proceed with human instrumentality. Gendo Ikari is looking to manipulate Rei into playing out his preferred scenario for the joining of humanity, but she rejects him and leaves everything up to Shinji. Tang ensues. It's a kick in the glass. Oh, and there's something in there about Asuka, and even a cameo by everybody's favorite penguin.
No.
In the end, Shinji rejects the false reality of the Instrumentality Project, returning to the world as an individual who's willing to be hurt in the future, if just to live a life with its own singular purpose. But old habits die hard. Disgusting. End of Evangelion. It's an experience. Well, everything is an experience. But I meant a really notable one. Part 4. Tumbling down, tumbling down, tumbling down. I have to admit, I was one of those people that didn't quite get End of Evangelion upon my first viewing. Actually, it took a few viewings to understand most of it. I'm still picking up on a few things now, and I still have a few questions about a few elements in it today. It didn't help that at the first time I watched it, I hadn't technically seen all of the TV series, just most of it, and then read summaries to the last episodes. Even after closing the gap, I was left bewildered. The experience of watching EOE is what I describe as traumatizing. It really puts the characters and the viewers through the ringer, really socks the watcher in the stomach with its intensity.
That's how grown-ups kiss. We'll do the rest when you get back, alright?
I held back talking about Gendo Ikari in my review of the TV series because I felt like there was a lot of spoiler material there, and wanted to get to the end of his arc here in the movie before I really discussed the character. Clearly not Father of the Year, Gendo Ikari is nevertheless a fascinating example of a walled-off man determined only to love one person in his life and obsessed with reuniting with that person through any means necessary, even if it means the end of the world itself. We can see in flashbacks in the series that he's always been a manipulative guy, even early on. And it was questionable whether he actually loved Yui until you could see the lengths he would go to see her again. That was basically his motivation to carry out the Instrumentality Project. But with all his manipulations of Shinji, Rei, NERV, and the like, he couldn't have foresaw what was actually going to happen in the movie, because he was so confident that only he could be the one to unlock Instrumentality that nobody else had the will to. And it was through Rei Ayanami, a Rei Ayanami he thought was just a blank slate to do his will, that his plans fell apart and he was unable to control Instrumentality after all. This is why his entry into Instrumentality is so violent, as he is symbolically bitten in half by the representation of his wife and his son's wills.
For so long, I've waited for this moment with bated breath. At long last we meet again, Yui. I have always known that. I'll only hurt Shinji if I'm with him. Leaving him alone was the best thing that I could do.
You were...
Human instrumentality as a concept owes a lot to the 1953 Arthur C. Clarke novel, Childhood's End, where humanity evolves into a collective hive mind called the Overmind. There, the evolution of mankind is ushered in through the help of demon-like alien beings at an evolutionary dead end. In End of Evangelion, it is said that humanity itself has reached an evolutionary dead end, thus the reasoning behind the forced evolution of man by assimilating everybody via instrumentality. It's from this mass of humanity, this collection of souls, that Shinji makes the most important decision of his life and in the entirety of Evangelion. That is, to remain an individual.
It's the world you wanted. I think this is different from what I want. If you wish for the existence of others, the inner walls will come back. Also, it will bring back the fear of the other.
And frankly, that's why I believe, despite the despair and uncertainty that the movie is steeped in, even as it leaves us on the shore with Shinji and Asuka, it ultimately has a hopeful, if not quite happy, ending. Though it's not clear how many people will choose to step out of the sea of LCL and retain their AT field to live a normal human life, the seeds are planted that everyone will eventually do so. More importantly, Shinji has found the will to, as well as Asuka, to hold on to their individual humanity despite its many flaws. This is the message of End of Evangelion. You can't just run away to a more comfortable world. You have to meet the uncertainty and pain as a person, and try to move ahead, even if just a little bit, in that reality. Part 5. Evangelion ends. Again. Character designer Yoshiyuki Sadamoto was tasked to create a version of Evangelion's story for manga format that technically premiered before the television show because of delays in production. The manga itself had many delays because of Sadamoto's work on other projects, some Evangelion related. It ran for 96 chapters and was collected into 14 manga volumes. For the most part, it kept in line with the basic plotline of the TV show, deviating here and there in plot points and character attitudes. When Sadamoto eventually wrapped up the manga, he did it in a fashion similar to the movie End of Evangelion. The same basic plot was used, but with a few interesting differences. For one, there was a confrontation between Shinji and Gendo, where the latter showed the power of Atom resting inside his hand by manifesting an AT field. Gendo admits that he could never truly love Shinji because he always felt like he took Yui, Shinji's mother, away from him. Misato ends up explaining to Shinji a lot more about the origin of the angels and their connection to the creation of mankind. Shinji activates Eva Unit 1 in time to fight the Eva series alongside Asuka. Ritsuko Akagi is able to shoot Gendo before she dies. Asuka sees a vision of Kaji before she's tagged into Instrumentality. And finally, the conclusion is very different. It seems as though in the end of the manga, the world is given a soft reboot, with remnants of what happened still around, but with humanity none the wiser as to what occurred. Shinji has no memory of his previous life, and ends up running into Asuka in this new world. It's a more whimsically hopeful ending than the movie EOE's. But honestly, I have a problem with it, and it's the same problem I have with Rebuild's ending too. A reborn world where Shinji can just forget about the angels and Evas and live blissfully in peace is not really much different than the fake reality of the Instrumentality Project. It's just more running away. Then we get into the Rebuild movies. Now don't get me wrong, I generally enjoy the Rebuild movies. I mean, except the third, that thing was a pile of shit. I only owned a copy out of completion's sake. But they're overall a solid series. It's just that, well, they're kind of the Playmobil version of Eva. Part 6. You Are Not Finished. The Rebuild of Evangelion Project, Evangelion New Theatrical Edition, is a series of 4 movies that tell an alternate version of the television series, veering into its own separate canon as it unfolds. The series utilizes the concept of Johaku from Japanese gagaku music, with the final film representing the end or repeat bar line. The original intent was that the movies would be mostly a straightforward retelling of the show with updated visuals, with only the finale being a departure. This, however, was discarded as soon as the second movie was in production. A new animation studio, Kara, was founded by Anno with the specific purpose of making these films. The first movie, You Are Not Alone, is basically a remake of the first arc of the TV series up until the end of Operation Yashima, as shown in episode 6. It has a few differences in how certain plot points are accomplished, but stays basically in line with what was already shown before, but with all new animation.
Listen, Rei, why do you pilot the Eva?
Because it's a bond.
A bond?
Yes, a bond.
With my dad?
With everyone.
You know, you're stronger than I am.
That's because I have nothing else.
The second film, and my favorite, You Can Not Advance, is where the film series begins its departure from the television series. As while it retains certain plot points from later on in the show, it also introduces several new elements and reshuffles or changes certain others. It introduces new Evangelion character, and I use the word character with a laugh in my heart, Mari Illustrious Mikanami.
You smell good, like LCL. One of my favorite smells in the world. Your smell. I said I like it.
The third film, which is shit, is titled You Cannot Redo, which is basically entirely original, aside from some slight similarities to episode 24 of the TV show with Kaoru Nagisa taking a large role. It is set 14 years after the conclusion of the previous film, with a completely forced and nonsensical time skip, so that the viewers no longer fear creepily ogling underage Asuka. She's 28, Your Honor, I swear. It basically wastes its characters by developing pretty much none of them, and everybody is the same at the end of the movie as they were at the beginning. Except Kaworu, lol.
This is great. I like playing music with you.
Just f*** already!
Then there was a long-ass pause in production for several years. Anno was working on Shin Godzilla for one. The COVID pandemic certainly didn't help with the delays either. And, I don't know, maybe Anno got into one of his classic Anno moods too. I can only speculate. But we finally got the conclusion to the series with Thrice Upon a Time, the fourth movie, which utilizes elements of End of Evangelion, but for the most part does its own thing for good and ill. Mostly good, though, don't get me wrong.
I'm just going to rewrite the world into one that doesn't have Avis. A world where new people can live.
Birth of a new world. Neon Genesis.
Yeah.
That is so lame.
There are things I like about the Rebuild movies. They're colorful, they're vibrant. They inject a good deal of new life into the franchise, with several interesting new choices in the plots. There's some great action. The voice acting is, in Japanese, as usual, amazing, and so is the soundtrack. In fact, maybe even better than in the TV show in those ways. I'm happy to have some of them in my anime collection. It's an enjoyable series. But I don't know. I just think that there's this kind of shallowness and simplicity to the Rebuild series that makes it a tad watered down when compared to the television series. It feels, let's say, overly cultivated, like a neat, ordered little Evangelion garden. Everything is too measured and mathematical. There's none of those amazing uneven corners and beautiful complications to it that the TV show had. It's very settled, sort of whimsical and overly sentimental. Part 7. Kimochi Warui. Let's take a look at the finale of the Rebuild movies Thrice Upon a Time, in comparison to End of Evangelion and just in general. What do we see in it? For one, we see a lot of compelling and heartwarming development for the character of Rei Ayanami. Well, the character that is a Rei Ayanami, anyway. We see her grow more human as she experiences life in the village. And we see how her experiences transfer over to Shinji in the form of a resolve to not just continue on, but to persevere and confront his father. And that confrontation between Shinji and Gendo is certainly interesting and long coming. And as Gendo admits, it's a battle that cannot be resolved through physical means. It takes an intense conversation and an understanding between father and son to resolve their issues with each other. It's probably one of the things that Rebuild does that EOE lacks, a final confrontation between the two, and it's something that really helps deepen the emotional core of the final Rebuild feature.
So you were just like me.
Yes, I was. Headphones cut me off from the outside world. They protected me from the noise of others.
However, I think that Gendo Ikari gets off way too easily and happily in the end of the Rebuild movies. There's no real evidence that Rebuild Gendo is any less of a negligent, manipulative prick than his TV counterpart. He put Shinji and the entire world through a whole lot of suffering. While it's great to see Shinji work out his issues with his father, why is it that we're clearly given the impression that his outpouring to his son in the 11th hour is supposed to redeem him somehow? And of course we get all this information about him in the last minute, just before we're asked to sympathize with him after all the terrible things he's done. First of all, End of Evangelion has Gendo betrayed for his manipulations by Rei Ayanami, the figure he had tried controlling the most, and thus had the most confidence would never betray him. It was ironic and fit perfectly thematically. EOE didn't put up with his bullshit that he was afraid of Shinji. He was chomped for his sins. Rebuild Gendo, arguably a worse person, gets to have a heroic sacrifice that's meant to warm the cockles of our hearts for him?
That's the god-slaying that he wished for.
Don't even get me started on Mari. Who the fuck is Mari? We're given so little detail about her. What we do know is that she knew Gendo Fuyutsuki for a long time. She has no discernible character traits other than vaguely being cool with fighting in her Eva, and she somehow ends up with Shinji at the end of the story. A character she has barely interacted with. It gets worse. What the fuck is this ending? Shinji rewrites the world so that there's no Evas, but the Evas were never the problem to begin with. They were just an element of the problem. If anything, the Evas helped more than they hurt. The problem was that Gendo was a dick. And that was handled. So why does Shinji need to do anything? All he's doing by escaping into a world where there were never any Evas, and he can live blissfully with Mari, is, you guessed it, running away!
Isn't that cute? But it's wrong!
You can't do that. You can't have the entire theme of your series be don't run away from difficult reality, and then have the main character rewrite reality so it isn't so difficult for him anymore. That's evading responsibility. This is the difference between End of Evangelion and Thrice Upon a Time. EOE is not whimsical. It is not pat. It doesn't concern itself with sweetening the pot for the viewers. It says, fuck you, this is instrumentality, we're going to put you through this trauma, and you'll be stronger on the other side. It's hopeful but uncertain. It's ambiguous. Thrice Upon a Time abhors emotional ambiguity. It wants to be sickly sweet and evoke feelings of sincere accomplishment and finality. And it just isn't Evangelion! So yeah, when Mari runs off with Shinji and One Last Kiss, a banger by the way, plays, we're given a heartwarming smile that resonates with us for some time. But it doesn't change us the way that EOE does. EOE is absolutely transformative an experience, like watching all of Legend of the Galactic Heroes, or seeing Grave of the Fireflies for the first time. I doubt Thrice Upon a Time will be anything but a footnote in anime history in the long run. Thrice Upon a Time better than End of Evangelion? Thrice Upon a Time is fine. It's charming. Very charming. But End of Evangelion is Eva to the peak. It is entirely Eva. It is sublimely Eva. So, yeah, put me down for preferring End of Evangelion. Look, I don't mean to tear down the Rebuild movies to prop up the End of Evangelion. The movie is brilliant enough to stand on its own. I just want to be thorough in my covering all the ending phases of this franchise. Part 8. Conclusion. As it is, I completely missed out on covering Misato and Asuka's arcs in EOE because I wanted to talk more about Gendo's fate and Shinji's decision. But there's no shortage of video essays on Evangelion that will cover other aspects of EOE I might have glossed over, if not completely left out of my analysis. I also wanted to talk more about the similarities EOE has to Be Invoked, though the first among them being the unblinking brutality of combat that the two features show. This is part of why I consider EOE traumatizing, and why it ought to be, given the subject matter. And finally, I failed to mention how brilliant the soundtrack to the movie is, from Shiro Sugisu's background music, to vocal pieces like If I Can't Be Yours, and Come Sweet Death, not attempting to read the proper German name there, and more. You could do a whole video on music in Evangelion. Maybe if I revisit it, I will. I did 3 text reviews of the Rebuild movies, and I'll link to them in the description of this video. I probably won't do video reviews of those. I think I've said enough as it is. All I can say is, I've done what I could to the point of exhaustion. Anyway, that's enough Otaku Evolution for now. Next time I'll take a look at the English dubs of all the anime I've covered so far this year. Maybe including those Rebuild movies. Until then, this is Mike, paying the truth for Otaku Evolution. See ya!
Why won't you help me? Don't leave me alone! Don't abandon me! Don't kill me!
Just f*** already!